And good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good night. I thought I'd jump on again and let you guys know what the latest is with our wonderful tropical system that's out there. It's now Tropical Storm Fiona, and it is cruising along, barely moving. I'd say cruising along, but barely moving. It's about 10 to 15 miles an hour, so a little bit faster than you'd probably drive through a school zone. So not in a very big hurry as it moves its way off to the west and toward Puerto Rico. There are tropical storm warnings up for the Greater and Lesser Antilles and a lot of the islands in the Caribbean at this time. In terms of the way it looks like, the way it looks for us here in the United States, stateside, we'll be talking about that here in the next couple of seconds. Again, I really do hope everyone's having a good evening. The weather's been so nice lately. It's just tough for me to get on here with a clear conscience and tell you guys that hey, there's a tropical storm out there, because I know a lot of you guys are enjoying the evening because it's been, I mean, the weather's been fantastic lately across the Gulf Coast, from Louisiana through Mississippi and Alabama and Florida. But we do have something to talk about, and that is the tropical storm Fiona. And let me actually slide this over a little bit and make it pretty for you guys. I'm not quite sure what happened and why it doesn't look as nice as it did yesterday, but I will reset this so that it looks, there we go, that's maybe a little bit better. But right now, here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. That still looks a little goofy. Let's see if we can't fix this for you guys. There we go. We're getting there, slowly but surely. The latest from the National Hurricane Center, this is a tropical storm with wind right now at about, what is it, about 55 miles an hour now? Hold on. This is the latest of this as of 5 o'clock, so just about 2 hours ago. We're up to 60 miles an hour. There we go. So the latest in the National Hurricane Center, up to 60 mile an hour wind right now. And I left on the latest from the Hurricane Center in terms of the wind at every next step as we head through the next couple of days. So the next 12 hours, 24, 36, 48. And this may be tough to see, especially if you're watching, on a phone. If you got your phone up real close to your face, don't worry about squinting. You're going to have 60 mile an hour wind for the next what looks like about 60 hours, and then at 72 hours, we're up to 65 miles an hour, and then 70 mile an hour wind at 96 and 120 hours. 120 hours out, by the way, is 5 days. So the National Hurricane Center says this thing isn't even going to get to a hurricane by the time it's close to the Bahamas. If you kind of look at it, taking a curlicue off to the right there and kind of shifting off to the north. I mentioned yesterday during the discussion, if you happened to watch the video yesterday, I said we're going to know more today, this morning. The models are, once this thing gets a center and it actually has something to grab a hold of, which, by the way, just real quick, this is what it looks like, and I want to point something out on here, which is that the center of this thing is actually pulled away from the actual storm itself. The center of this is actually about, I don't know, a solid probably 40 miles off to the west of all the convection. So you see all the reds and the yellows and the deep kind of maroonish, almost black color in there. The center of this thing is not even near the convection. It's farther off to the west. So what ended up happening today is you had a fair bit of shear that was involved, and it kind of blew the storm. I don't want to say it blew the storm apart, but it allowed the center of the storm to keep on trucking, and then all the convection kind of stayed where it was, and so they kind of separated. So you've got all the convection here, and the center is kind of sitting here, and it's all marching west, kind of together, but all the thunderstorm activity is separated from the actual center of the storm. And I mentioned again, the modeling was going to grab a hold of stuff as we head through the morning this morning and into the afternoon. And a lot of the models are on board with this thing turning back off to the north, a lot like what the Hurricane Center is suggesting. And a lot of the modeling suggesting now that we end up with either a strong tropical storm or a Category 1 hurricane as we head through 5 days from now. As I've said yesterday and previously, as you guys know, I really don't like looking beyond 72 hours in terms of an intensity guidance, but we can look at 5 days, and somewhere between a strong tropical storm and a hurricane. Out 3 days, we're looking at a strong tropical storm, and that's about it, kind of somewhere in that 45 to 60 knot kind of window. That was the guidance from this morning. I'll mention again that we kind of have three scenarios. Either we get a break in the ridging and this thing hurries up and turns into a hurricane, or maybe even a Cat 2 or Cat 3, and it moves north and the ridge stays off to the west and we wave bye-bye to Fiona and it doesn't really bother anybody. The next option is we don't really get any strengthening and you end up with this kind of central ridge, and then it kind of glides into the Gulf of Mexico and maybe even into Mexico because the fence that keeps this thing from moving to the north remains. Or you get slow strengthening in an eastern ridge, and then it kind of shimmies north before it starts to kind of kick back off to the west again. So we end up with a track that looks like this, but then because the ridge is centered off to the east, and depending on when the timing of all this lines up, it may actually push back off to the west. And we saw some indications of that a little bit earlier today in some of the model guidance. Some of the operational stuff that we look at, the GFS and the Euro, one showing the central ridge and slow organization, which eventually brought Fiona into the Bahamas and a little bit closer to Florida. And that's on the left here. And then on the right, an eastern ridge with slower organization, and you ended up with a much stronger Fiona just off the coast of Florida, but never really made landfall on Florida because the ridge kept on moving and it eventually was able to escape to the north, and it kind of brushes by the east coast according to the one model. So you have two of the options here that actually line up pretty well with what we were talking about yesterday in terms of kind of our scenarios, our options that we kind of had. And I mentioned yesterday that it was probably going to be the most likely outcome was kind of a blend of the two or all three. One thing I did want to note, though, we're kind of related to this, is our latest hurricane model guidance. This is the HWRF, which is actually showing we've got the one, which was on the left, which was yesterday, which was quick organization and strengthening. And that had it north of Puerto Rico and moving north by the time we got to, I believe this is midnight Sunday and into Monday morning. So kind of like the overnight hours, Sunday and into Monday, already moving north. That's the left-hand picture. On the right-hand side is the one that came out today and this afternoon, which shows slow strengthening, slow organization, and actually still has it moving off to the west on the west side of Puerto Rico and near Cuba. So again, this lines up with what we were talking about yesterday. So I just want to show you guys that, this isn't magic. There is actually some science to this, and the modeling is doing exactly what the modeling should do. None of this is coming to a surprise to me, and none of this should be a surprise to you if you watched the video from yesterday. So you're probably sitting there going, all right, Nick, I get it. What gives? All right, so the slow but not completely slow strengthening is probably what's going to happen. We've seen that thus far. It's been strengthening and organizing overnight last night a little bit quicker than they thought. But then it got sheared apart today, as anticipated. I don't know that I necessarily anticipated the center to be completely naked and floating around out there and all the convection to be back in behind it. But I did think we were going to have some shearing today, and it was going to limit the ability for this thing to organize and strengthen. So it's kind of doing exactly what we were thinking in a different way, but this is why guidance isn't, as they say, guidance isn't gospel, and this is just, a good guide. I still tend to think that we end up with ridging that splits that allows this thing to kind of ease to the north. Beyond that, what happens to that second ridge is still in question, and what kind of U.S. impacts we may have from this, unfortunately, are not decided at this point. I wanted to put up the rapid intensification numbers again for today, just so you guys, if you watched the video yesterday, the numbers today a little bit higher, not crazy high, but a little bit higher than they were yesterday. And still not a high chance, as it says here, but the data is suggesting that there is a potential, and mainly as we head through beyond 36 hours. You're going to have a lot of land interaction as we head through the next 36 hours, and shear as well. But I tend to think that even through probably 72 hours, you're going to have a fair bit of land interaction, but that's just one meteorologist talking. The computer says that there's a 14% chance that we end up with rapid intensification of picking up 65 knots of wind in terms of strength in the next 72 hours. And that's 2.5-ish times the climatological norm. So again, not crazy high, but definitely above normal. And that's just given the environment that it's in right now, because as we talked about yesterday, I mean, this thing is sitting on top of some very warm water, not only at the surface, but also at depth. And so it's got a lot of food to eat. And you give a tropical system a lot of food to eat, and it'll chow down. It's no different than your 13-year-old kid that you got at home. He's going to eat. You give him some food, he's going to eat. And hurricanes are no different, and they probably create the same amount of a mess around the house too, let's be real. So we've got plenty of warm water out there for this thing to chow down on, and so that's why I think this bears watching. The tracks that you see on here are actually from yesterday, but I think that's why this thing bears watching over the next couple of days, because yes, while the National Hurricane Center is showing this thing turning north, as many of you who lived through Katrina can probably attest to, it's turning hurricanes, turning tropical systems, don't always turn exactly as anticipated, and there is some level of we don't know what is going to happen beyond a specific time and turn. And I think that's what we're looking at here with the models today kind of playing one of these games with us for today. In fact, kind of both models are showing something similar to this, where it gets to a point near the Bahamas and can't really escape very quickly. The GFS eventually shows an escape route. The Euro, not so much, and the Euro takes it a little bit closer to Florida before we run out of time. We can't see any further. But this was, again, one of the scenarios that we were talking about. I still think it's going to be a blend of all three, but nevertheless, that's kind of the idea. So I know I've got a much smaller audience tonight than I'm accustomed to having, but if anybody does have any questions, feel free to ask. That's kind of what we're looking at, and I tend to think that we can't sleep on this one if you live along the Gulf Coast quite yet, until it gets probably north of the Bahamas. You're going to have to keep tabs on this probably every day, checking in and making sure that, hey, this is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And coming back and just kind of double checking and saying, okay, what does it look like today? What's the forecast say for today? It's probably a good time to double check your hurricane preparedness kit. Just make sure you got stuff, water, food, medicines, everything ready to go. You should, because it is still hurricane season, have it from the beginning of the year, but just in case. I know it's a long summer. Sometimes you chow down on hurricane snacks because you get hungry. And so probably a good time to check on that. Water, food, and then, just kind of check around the house. What would you have to do if there was, for whatever reason, a tropical system headed toward you outside your house in terms of cleaning up brush and debris and clearing out the gullies and the storm drains and stuff. So, how many days until this is a problem? Well, the forecast you see here goes all the way out through Tuesday of next week. So that goes all the way out 5 days. It would be another 6 or 7 to get through the Bahamas at the current pace, and then it would be another 8 or 9, heaven forbid, it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. So, I mean, you've got more than a week before this thing is even possibly a concern, and you've got probably at least another 5 to 6 days of monitoring this to make sure that it's not a concern. So if you've got weekend plans, this isn't going to bother your weekend plans. If you've got plans next week, this isn't going to bother your plans next week for the most part. The earliest it would probably bother you would be probably Thursday of next week in terms of having to rearrange things. A week from today, having to rearrange things because maybe it would be near the Bahamas and pointed toward you, wherever it is that you're watching this. And then you say, okay, cool, I got to, make sure that my hurricane preparedness kit is up to date and blah, blah, blah. But it's probably next weekend before it's going to bother truly make any kind of landfall, I would think, across the mainland of the United States. So that's kind of the good news. So again, I just wanted to jump on real quick and give you guys a quick update in terms of kind of what we were looking at with Fiona here. Will the cooler weather, this is a good question from Danielle, will the cooler weather keep us at less of a risk if we keep the forecast cool, or is it too soon to tell? That's actually a really good question, Danielle. And to answer that question, I am going to jump over here, and I'm actually going to zoom this out quite a bit. Let's do a full disk, And I'm going to slide down. Give me a hot second. I'll get your answer here in a second. So the reason that we are so cool right now, there we go, is we've got a good northerly flow, a little front down off to the south. If we keep it cool like this, we keep a front down to the south, we keep the ridge of high pressure where it is, that would help to keep stuff away. But that's unfortunately not how things work. Let me make sure that let's get this just stop like freaking out on you guys. Like, there we go. That's unfortunately not how things work. So if we run this thing back quite a ways, you can see how things kind of traverse through time, and we're already eroding away at the ridge of high pressure that brought all the cooler air. So this thing's already on the way out. If we were to get another shot of cooler air across the Gulf Coast, that would mean another front was coming and another ridge of high pressure was building in. The problem we run into is these ridges of high pressure that build in when they come out of Canada like this tend to slide off to the east. So it would show up and then it would slide off to the east. And that takes us back to our situation here where we say, well, what happens when we have the eastern ridge? Well, the eastern ridge is what allows things to get into the Gulf of Mexico. So, unfortunately, if we got another shot of this cooler air, or even 2 or 3 more in the next couple of days, it really wouldn't help us in the long run, because all we would be doing is placing puzzle pieces in a way that would allow for whatever's out there to maybe sneak into the Gulf of Mexico. What you really want is for, and this is the forecast right now, things to warm up. You want it to be hot because we get a big subtropical ridge in place, and that's going to help. And we can kind of slide this. The big subtropical ridge, that would help to guide whatever's out there south of the Gulf Coast, south of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and into Mexico or into South Texas instead of the northern Gulf Coast, because you'd have a big stout ridge of high pressure in place. Looks like Katrina forming. What do you think? Well, the good news is no. Katrina was a little bit different. It was a little bit farther off to the north, a little more disorganized as it got to the Bahamas, and it was a semi-similar situation with ridges of high pressure moving around, where a lot of you guys that lived through it probably remember hearing about from your local weather people. Cold front's going to come on through and pick this thing up and take it away. And I don't want to fault the people that were communicating that to you, but they probably weren't communicating the whole story, unfortunately, because with every cold front comes a ridge of high pressure in behind it, and that ridge can do exactly what's being shown here, which is slide on through and open the door for a system to come barreling through. So I don't know that this necessarily reminds me of Katrina at all. If anything, it reminds me more of not the bad Hurricane Isaac, but the Hurricane Isaac from, I believe it was 2015. It was actually about this time of the year, too, come to think of it. But it formed in roughly the same place. It traveled along roughly the same journey, and it had to deal with roughly the same puzzle pieces. It ended up turning to the north and not bothering anybody. It was a fish storm. As far as I can remember, outside of the islands. It did clip some of the islands, but in terms of the United States, it stayed away from us, for sure. But no two storms are the same, and no two setups with these storms are ever the same either. So are we going to have anything to worry about with this storm? Nancy, we don't know yet necessarily, specifically, if you have to worry. It's a little too far out for specifics like, Louisiana, Mississippi have to worry, but Alabama and Florida don't have to worry about a storm that's, west of Puerto Rico. It's just, I wish we could do it, but we can't. We kind of have to wait and see. As I was saying a couple minutes ago, you've got about 5 more days to 6 more days to just checking in with the system. You don't have to do anything necessarily, but just check with the weather forecast. Hey, what's it doing today? What's the forecast look like today? And just make sure that it's not pointed at you. Because every day you get a new forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and you'll be able to kind of track this along too. And you're really probably not in the clear until this thing not only turns north, but probably has to make it past the Bahamas at this point, just given, again, the puzzle pieces that you're looking at here that are in place. So yeah, it may show a little bit of a turn here, but if it turns and then stops and then scoots into the Gulf of Mexico, well, if you stop paying attention when it turned, you may tune back in 2 days later, a lot like people did with Katrina, and realize that there's a Category 5 hurricane in the center of the Gulf of Mexico. And we don't want that. So I'm not here to tell you that nothing's going to happen. I'm here to tell you that you need to keep paying attention to this until it's north of the Bahamas. Please. That's my big ask in terms of the next couple of days. But it's a good question, and I wish we could know this far out. But unfortunately, we just can't. I wish we could. But yeah, so hopefully that answers a handful of the questions that you guys have asked. I'm going to call it a night. I'm not going to belabor the point here and keep you guys around forever. But I did want to jump on real quick and give you guys kind of an update because I knew that we were going to get some new information this morning that was going to be meaningful. And I knew as we head through the day today that the models were going to be showing some different kind of resolutions and endpoints for where the tropical storm was going to be coming up in 5 and 7 days. And I know you guys are going to see stuff floating around social media. I also know that there are some less than, let's see here, they're not judicious with the information that they share on social media and other places on the web. And they may be showing you guys stuff that isn't necessarily a likely outcome, just simply to raise your anxiety level and get you to tune in again tomorrow. My goal with you guys is just to help you rest easy at night. So that would be my pitch right now. Here's all the information that you guys hopefully just saw, and just keep tabs on the forecast over the next couple of days. That's about it, Let's see here. What weather app do you suggest? I'm going to suggest my weather app just as soon as it's ready. Give it time. It's still in the works. I'm still working on this. But I'm hoping to have this thing prepared for you guys as we head into severe weather season this fall. In terms of keeping up with the hurricane, you also don't need an app for that. You can just head on over to the blog for that one. I'll try and keep it updated with the latest from the National Hurricane Center for you guys. And that's about as much as you have to do right now, is just keep tabs on the National Hurricane Center forecast for the next about 4 to 5, maybe even 6 days, 7 days. And then after that point, then we'll know, is it going to be a problem for us, or is it going to be a problem for the fish, and out to sea. So everyone, make sure that you have a good night. Maybe just sit outside for 15, 20 minutes. It is pretty nice across the area with the dew points that are slowly starting to creep back up, but still rather pleasant for the kind of fake fall that we're dealing with right now. Things do warm back up over the next couple of days. It does get humid again. There is a chance for a couple of isolated storms as we head through the weekend, though I'll post a forecast about that coming up tomorrow morning, hopefully somewhere between about 6 and 8 a.m. Keeping an eye out for that right here on the Facebook page. Until then, I'll see you guys later.